the thing I go to, the next part of this whole thing is the Bears team as a whole and where we're currently standing. So the Bears this year need offensive line help. That's apparent. They need one more big piece. And the reason why I say one more big piece is because they need to either draft like a center or they need to get or draft a left tackle or sign a left tackle in free agency. Or even I don't know how if he's going to get signed and or tagged and traded, but somebody like a Teron Armstead from the Saints, who his contract's technically up. I don't know if they can even tag him, but essentially that would be a perfect pick up because you would put him at left tackle, Tevin Jenkins move over to right tackle, then you get James Daniels at center, Cody Whitehair as guard, and Borum at guard. So that you can move forward with a really solid offensive line there.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. And then wide receiver is the other big thing. I feel like they are going to go for a wide receiver in the free agency. So that's why we have the class pulled up right here. These are at least the top 5 listed. Of course, Allen Robinson's not coming back. We all know that. So, that we can at least knock off the list. But the point is that these are the top 5 wide receivers available. Now, there is a couple other wide receiver names that I'll mention, but I'm going to start off with right off the bat. We're not getting Devontae Adams. It's not happening.
Yeah, no, that was like literally parroted. It felt like just a meme to me. I was like, it's not.
No,
it doesn't make sense right now at all.
No, Devontae Adams is going to go to the Broncos when Aaron Rodgers gets traded to the Broncos. That's going to happen. So, regardless of that, we're going to skip over that. Next up, Chris Godwin is one that I definitely think they should offer on, and I think you can get him at a relatively reasonable price for a number 1 star wide receiver in the prime of his career because of the ACL injury. It is obviously a big injury, and I think you can kind of get lucky with like the Allen Robinson contract, like of past with the Bears, where Allen Robinson had the big ACL injury, was a super talented receiver in the prime of his career, and the Bears were able to get him on a cheaper deal for 3 years because of the injury, and nobody else really wanted to take a chance on him like that. Right. So I think you could do that with Chris Godwin. It's probably going to cost a little bit more than the Robinson contract did, but I'm willing to give him, 13, 14 a year, 15 a year even, if if that's what it takes to get him here. Because I think overall
he's going to be more expensive than that, honestly, because I think that like Mike Evans gets all the, like the number 1 wide receiver part, but he played so much in the slot and also was just like being fed the ball. I don't know. Maybe. I feel like at this point ACL injuries are so like successful on pound repair that might not factor in as much, but
you just never know what teams are going to feel about it,
Yeah.
Like it's just you get that all the time. I mean, like I said, Allen Robinson a couple years ago was a star receiver that had the big blown out torn ACL. So it's like you never know what teams are going to be interested if they're going to be afraid of that, or who knows. He's 26 years old, so like I said, he's literally in the prime of his career. And if you can get him, on a, like I said, a 15, if you have to go a little bit more, I'd be even fine with that. Like 15, 16 and a half million a year. Get him on that for like 4 years. I'd be happy with that. But so Chris Godwin's one where I go, that's a possibility. How likely of a possibility? I feel like if somebody offers him in the range of 17 to 18, he's going to be out of our market. So we're not going to compete with that because we didn't want to give Allen Robinson 18 a year when he was playing, at the time when he deserved it. We're not going to give it to a guy who's coming off an ACL injury that we don't really know, how that's going to turn out.
But but also maybe we will because with inflation,
new organization,
the time period, the money's changed a bit. That's actually cheaper than Allen Robinson was, I guess, if you technically want to view it that way. But
I mean, it's a possibility, but I just feel like the Bears aren't going to want to saddle themselves to that much money right away. Like I don't think the first move that Ryan Poles makes is automatically taking away nearly half the cap space he has available.
I would view wide receiver at that point as a luxury.
I mean, I think it's
Justin Fields.
It's a must. It's a must because you need to give Justin Fields a target. Like I love Darnell Mooney, he's great, but Darnell Mooney can't be the only guy out there. Like he needs to. You need at least a number. Like if you get somebody else that we'll talk about on this list, we'll go through a couple other names, but you just need somebody. So I feel like if Chris Godwin's available for the right price, he's automatically my number 1 target on this list. Mike Williams is another good one. 27 years old. You give him a big target for Justin Fields. A little bit of a more reliable, like go up and get it kind of receiver, which would be a perfect foil to having Mooney on the other side, who's a speedster, smaller guy. That would be a good option for me. I just feel like Mike Williams is going to be highly sought out. He's probably going to be the highest sought out receiver on this list because Devontae's probably not available. So then you're looking at basically the next healthiest superstar on the list is Mike Williams.
Yep.
And so that's where I would go with that. Now we start getting into the next tier of receiver, which is, I think, in my opinion, more accessible for the Bears, is Michael Gallup starting off the list, obviously number 5 on there. You also get guys like Juju Smith-Schuster and Christian Kirk and DJ Chark and even Odell. I told my dad this. I was like, I could be talked into Odell. It's like if you told me that you were going to get Odell for 3 years, like 40 million, I'd be like, okay, I could be talked into that. Like 13 a year for an Odell.
Oh, sure.
All right. Yeah. Like that's not bad. I would take that.
Yeah. I mean, if the most recent report is like that he's saying that he wouldn't, or he wants to stay, yada, yada, yada. But,
well, I mean, yeah, but that also depends on how much they can give him, you know?
Yeah.
If they're like, hey, well, you can stay, but we're gonna offer you 7 a year. Well, he might go, I know I want a big contract, like, because he probably knows. Because here's the thinking too: is you can't really even blame Odell too much for this. But this is like his last. Like, if he signs a multi-year deal with the Rams, it's his last big contract. Like, he's not gonna get another big contract at 32 years old, 33 years old.
Oh yeah.
So like, this is his last big contract. So if like they offer him 7 to 10 million a year or something like that, and he goes, you know what, that's just not enough, you know. Then I could see him hitting the market and going for, you know, like I said, 13, 14 million a year, which I'd be fine with paying Odell because he's still a great receiver. And if you actually scheme for him, you know, he'll be happy because he's getting targets. And then at that point, you know, you actually have a receiver who's very talented and very, you know, reliable at the catch point. And then you get a guy who, you know, a target for Justin Fields, who is, you know, obviously a dynamic target. So I could be talked into Odell. The only thing is I would really consider guys like Michael Gallup, Mike Williams, or Chris Godwin before him. So it'd have to be one of those where Odell's like, you know, I have to choose between Odell, Juju Smith-Schuster, and like Christian Kirk. And then it's like, okay, well, I like Christian Kirk coming from the Cardinals, by the way. Shout out to Aaron out there. I just think that Odell's like a step ahead of Kirk for me because he has that like superstar capability still.
Sure.
And the catching ability. So yeah, that's where I would say. So what I'm hoping is I would love for the Bears to sign Chris Godwin. I'd be totally happy with a Mike Williams or a Michael Gallup. I think ultimately I think we're probably in the market for Michael Gallup, Odell, or Christian Kirk. So. Because I heard that the Eagles want to get DJ Chark, so that's one where, you know, you're probably not going to be able to compete with them if they've already nailed that guy as their guy. They're going to give him a little bit more money than they probably should.
I forgot to bring this up when you were going over Williams, but I don't see him leaving. I feel like they can't get rid of him right now with Herbert. So I was kind of considering him a guy who's definitely going to get locked up.
Yeah, it just depends because it just depends because you never know if like he's wanting outlandish money, you know, or something like that. Like he's hearing Devontae is getting 30 and he's like, well, I can at least get 25, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's all with that is. So like I said, I think we're in the market more for those guys, and I could be talking to Odell. I'd be happy with Christian Kirk, and I'd be pretty happy with Michael Gallup. So I just hope they do something. I think they will, and I hope because I think that they're going to want to go for an offensive line in the draft because that's where Ryan Poles wants to build. So I do think that wide receiver is where they're going to go in free agency. Like that's the spot they're going to, you know, seal.
Yeah.
Because the other thing too is in Matt Eberflus's defense, you need a slot corner like a Kenny Moore, who they have there now, who's a Pro Bowler, to really play a huge role in that defense, and we don't have a slot corner at all that's capable of doing anything near what he's going to hope for. And
what about Vildor?
Yeah, listen, Vildor is good, but he's good as like a fourth corner. Like you bring him in as like a nickel, like a, you know, hey, you're coming in because our 3 best players are already on the field, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So
he's a
totally
good depth piece, I think, is what you're saying.
Yes, I'm totally happy with him being on the. Like, I want him on the roster. I just don't want to see him out there for long periods of time.
Right. Okay. So that seems fair to me then.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's the Bears talk. That's what I've got for you. Anything else you want to hit on the Bears real quick?
No, I feel like this year more than last year's, it's going to go by quicker into the season's going to start. It's going to be way more exciting. I would have to believe it's going to be fun to see Justin Fields get reps with the starters off the bat and in training camp and everything. I just hope that with like, I hope basically that they take the opportunity to really jump on the like improving the line with free agency and getting all that done quickly. And that's what I'm looking forward to the most. Like, I think we anticipate the defense is going to be a little bit worse for wear this year. If they can make up for pieces with like, you know, good coaching and scheming and stuff like that's great. I wouldn't be super surprised to see like a blockbuster move if they were trying to get rid of like Robert Quinn at the top of his value. That'd be interesting.
Oh, it wouldn't be Robert Quinn. It'd be Khalil Mack, by the way.
He's not at the top of his value. Robert Quinn is.
Yeah, but Robert Quinn's a year or two older, and he's had issues where there's been years where he hasn't played well. So it's like, whereas Khalil Mack, it's Khalil Mack. I mean, you know that
he's been hurt too, though. He's been hurt and been playing. I guess it's one of the, you know, damned if you do, damned if you don't type of things, where if he plays through injury, then it's like, oh, he just doesn't look the same. He's washed or whatever. But if he didn't play, then they say he didn't play. So just basically he hasn't had an opportunity to heal well. So, I mean, either one. At this point for me, they're kind of equivalent in terms of importance to the team because one's been more injured and one's been more healthy but playing better recently. So I don't know. Either way, I'm not getting attached to defensive players anymore. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, I love Khalil, and I feel like he's the identity, you know, he's like the marquee guy that everybody plans for, and I love seeing him opposite of Quinn. To be honest, I kind of am on the side of I hope they don't trade him, because I don't think you're going to get enough value for the player that Khalil Mack is in the locker room and his, you know, overall when he's on the field, how well he's performing. And I feel excited for the new defense because I feel like it's good for them to switch to a 4-3 because you now have two guys who can just put their hand in the dirt and get to the quarterback and stop worrying about, you know, dropping in coverage and all that stupid crap that we used to see out of, you know, that 3-4 defense we were running before. Not to say that it wasn't bad because we did have obviously some great years, but I think it also helped that we had some incredible players those years. So
yeah,
I'm excited to see a more stable defense at 4-3 with players that I think can play better in a 4-3 setting. So, you know, Bilal Nichols being able to be a 3-tech, purely a 3-tech and not have to switch between the two, or I think that'll help him. And I mean, if they bring him back, I guess I think they're going to, but you know, it's one of those where who knows.
I want to see how Tonga plays too.
Yeah.
In limited time. Yeah. Tonga and Travis Gibson too, who like in their limited time, like really.
Well, and Travis Gibson was he was a pure edge rusher that then had to try to learn how to be a linebacker in our old defense. So he could just go back to being a pure edge rusher like we drafted him, which is nice. So
yeah,
that'll help too. So, and he was already making strides last year as an edge rusher. And then now you throw him in the, you know, actual idea that he can just be an edge rusher is going to help, I think.
Yeah.
So.
It's exciting. It's better to look forward to. I mean, it was the same thing. We're not at the side where we were pre-draft, where we just don't want to even see the team. This is at least something more promising. So, I don't know. Roll the dice again.
Well, listen, I feel a little bit better about it. So let's put it that way.
Yeah, totally.